It is time for football chatter as we continue to push further and further into the postseason, getting ready for the second round of the playoffs this Friday. Our guest, John Baetz, he is the publisher and CEO of Kansas Pregame Magazine. I know you told me you're already starting to make that push for the winter magazine that'll be coming out before Christmas, John, but bringing you on to talk some football as we get ready for the second round. For you, I mean, we'll start at the top, John. I mean, Class 6A, what stood out so far as we get ready for those second round matchups?
Well, I think one overriding feeling for me is that it seems like maybe we're going to have more classes that are going to have new contenders this year. You know, you look at 1A Conway Springs is already knocked out. We knew Gardner Edgerton graduated a ton, and while they are 6A is really seems like they're wide open. It just feels like there's a potential to see more new faces. But specifically talking about 6A, I think when you look at the east side of the bracket, you have the potential to have a bunch of really good games. Like I really think it's possible that every one of the east side games could be within 2 touchdowns or tighter, which means a lot of parity. Kind of usually in every bracket, there is one team or 2 teams that is they're going to have a few blowouts, and it just doesn't seem like on the east side of the bracket that you really have that very much. And then the huge, I'm assuming that everybody is massively surprised by Mays. Not so much that they're good, but they are so good that they're so dominant after they kind of. It seemed like they were picking up the pieces a little bit in the post Avery Johnson era. And now it just seems like they're the clear number one.
You look in 5A, and like there's some other teams like I like these little quads right now for the second round. I mean, like Baser, like on the east side, Baser Linwood's really good, but it's hard to look past that quad of St. Thomas Aquinas and Mill Valley, and then obviously St. James Academy on the bottom part of that quad, and then on the west side, Salina Central is really good, but it's hard to look past that Great Bend and Hayes High potential matchup for the next round. So 5A is still interesting, but man, it's hard not to look past those little quads of sections right now of the bracket.
You said it. Those are the storylines. Is Aquinas and Mill Valley going to be the state championship game again this year? Because frankly, it was last year. Not to take anything away from Hayes High, but clearly that western half of the bracket was just not as good as the very best of the eastern half of the bracket last year. And Mill Valley struggled with some injuries. It's going to be really interesting to see if they can get it done. Fascinating storyline for me, being a Western Kansas kid, is Randy Dreiling is a Victoria native, Joel Appleby is a Russell native, and here they are coaching arguably the 2 best programs in the Kansas City Metro, and facing off in such a critical game early. I think certainly St. James Academy may have something to say about it. And then the other storyline that you mentioned is Great Bend and Hayes. Was one of them going to emerge, and are they able to tighten the gap a little bit between that east side? Of course, Great Bend looked incredible. Ian Premer showed why he's one of the most significant recruits in the country in that win over Hayes. And right now, you would kind of get that feeling that maybe Great Bend is the team that's going to come out of the West, and maybe they can close the gap. But those are great storylines and going to be fun things to follow. You hate to write anybody off. You always hate to do that. Bishop Carroll's a great story, turning things around under Chris Jacks after a couple of mediocre years by their standards, and getting that win over Derby was really impressive for them. And now, are they going to be able to make a playoff push? Are they going to be able to trip up Great Bend? Probably not. I think Great Bend's really good, and I think really talented, and so likely they're going to face a huge matchup with Hayes next week, and likely one of those 2 teams is going to emerge from the west side of the bracket.
You go to Class 4A, John. I mean, you got some good name brands, especially on that west side of the bracket. I felt like, I think Cape and Mount Carmel has separated themselves for a lot of people in Class 4A on the west side. But, I mean, there's still a lot of really big names that have had really good years this year on that west side.
Yeah, Andover Central graduated a ton. What a fantastic job Coach Tuttle's done with that program. Really, in many other classifications that maybe didn't include a Bishop Miege, he probably has a couple of more state championships under his belt, and has just really built that program so well after taking over for Tom Audley there at Andover Central. Doesn't have the same athletes across the board that he had last year, but I don't think you can write them off. But Capen's been playing so well and has beat some of the very best teams out of all classifications this year. They certainly look like they're going to be the Western representative. And then on the other side, you've got a Bishop Miege team that hits the playoffs with a losing record again. But of course, we all know that they're loaded with athletes that are on par with any of the best that the state have to offer. And it's hard to imagine a scenario where they don't come out of that side of the bracket. I've liked Ottawa all year, and they've lost some games that I've been a little bit surprised about. Walt Alexander does a really good job of building programs. He's done it everywhere that he's went throughout his career. Belleville, Atchison County, Topeka. He coached at Hill City way back in the day and had some of the best Hill City teams that they have had in their tenure there. And I think he lost his starting quarterback to a collarbone probably 6 weeks ago, and I believe that that athlete is back for them. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do. Labette County is a great story with Coach Argabright taking over just prior to the start of practice. Also, the head boys basketball coach there lost his top player, Jamal Jackson, to injury after the first week of the season, and has kept that Labette County team going and having a really nice year in spite of some of those challenges.
In 3A, John, I mean, I think Topeka Hayden's had the bullseye on their back to lead the way in the East, and then Andale's had their bullseye on their back to lead the West. Do you see anything changing as in what stands out in that second round in Class 3A?
This you would have to be kind of crazy to not pick Andale against Hayden again, and Andale looks so dominant. It looks like Hayden probably maybe is going to have a hard time to close that gap even a little bit more. That's likely the way it's going to play out. There are some great stories. Santa Fe Trail in their second season under Greg Slade, putting together an undefeated season to this point, surviving last week in a thrilling contest. And Greg Slade is a guy like Walt Alexander that's built programs everywhere he went. At Rose Hill, won a state championship at campus, turned a campus program that struggled forever into a team that picked up a playoff win or two and did some really good things. Had a great tight end named Quentin Hicks that went on to play at South Dakota State University. And on the other side of the bracket, Hugoton, what a great season they've had. Yeah. Holcomb, what a great season they've had. I think, that Holcomb-Hugoton game was a great one. Pratt's had an outstanding season.
John Baetz, the Kansas Pregame Magazine Publisher, joining us here. We'll have to bring you back on and talk about the smaller classifications. But like you said, obviously our focus on football, but the winter season, what can people expect when that winter magazine comes out?
Yeah, so Winter Magazine will release the first week of December, covers basketball and wrestling. It is a massive undertaking because, when you consider boys and girls basketball and boys and girls wrestling, you're talking about like 1,000 teams.
Yeah.
So it's pretty comprehensive. A lot of the coverage of those teams is going to be relatively brief because you only have so much space and you only have so much time. But we've got some cool things that we're doing with, of course, Hoxie is trying to win a 6th straight 3-2-1A state championship. We're also taking a look at some all-time great basketball coaches. You've got Keith Riley entering, I think, his 57th season as head coach at Hill City. So that means he was head coach for 6 years before I was born. One of his first state championship players was my elementary school PE teacher. And then you've got Mark Applegate at South Gray, that's somewhere in the mid 40-ish years of his tenure. And those two guys are the two all-time winningest coaches in Kansas history. So we have a fun story on them. And Of course, always go to kansaspregame.com. Be sure and follow us on Facebook or Twitter, especially once we start doing deliveries. We update everybody where they can pick up hard copies, and then we release the online version that you can look at on your phone. And sorry I got so windy on all those. It's once we get to talking, it's hard not to mention somebody.
Hey, no, you're a repeat guest. You're a friend of the show, so you'll be back on for the smaller classifications.
And hey, FOS, that's awesome.
You've earned that badge. Hey, John, appreciate it. Looking forward to the Winter Magazine.
Thank you very much.
That is John Baetz, the publisher and CEO of Kansas Pregame Magazine. That'll do it for our football chatter.